Hey everyone. Now, it's been a while since my last market update. Uh, for some reason, I decided to record this one at 10 o'clock, so if I sound a little bit tired or just not in the mood, that's probably why. Now, since my last market update, quite a lot has happened. As you can tell, I think I recorded it somewhere up here, so you can see from then we've had a 20% drop. But nevertheless, in this market update, I'm going to be covering Bitcoin, ETH, SOL, and LIT. And I'm going to be giving potential plays that you could take, some of which I am taking personally, and I've announced to the servers that I'm working in. Uh, but yeah, that's it for now. Now, as some of you can tell, if I just zoom in a little bit more, this weekend we have been stuck in a range. If we just looking at Saturday, we've been stuck in a $400 range, right? So from, let's say, 800 to 200, right? This Sunday we've got a little bit more volatile. We've got a $600 range, right? So you can tell in comparison to like past weekends, as in back when the bull was around, the volatility isn't really there. We're not really moving. Now, the reason for that is, well, there's two reasons really that I think. One reason, quite obvious, is the summer holidays. Everyone's out adventuring, with spending time with their families, just away from charts. Companies aren't working at their full capacity. And the second reason, I'm going to have to show you the volatility index for this. You can see historically, whenever it's like Christmas, summer, you can see that volatility has died down. But the second reason is the volatility on Bitcoin overall is starting to die out. So now if I zoom out, you should be able to tell that the trend overall is more or less like this, right? So back then we had spikes quite frequently up, whereas here a spike up to like 8.4. Let's just say that is extremely rare, whereas back here much more common, right? Now, using a bit of common sense, I don't think that the future bull markets are going to be, and cycles as a whole, I don't think they're going to be as volatile as we've seen in the past. I think that these coming cycles are going to be different than what we expect. Now, do I know what to expect? No. But I can tell that they're going to be different. So, enough yapping. If you go back to the actual main chart, what do I see? Right? So, Bitcoin, as always, is currently stuck in a range. So, here's your range high. Here's your range low. Well, not as always, but quite frequently. In this choppy market, we are range bound, range high, range low. So, first of all, quite obviously, what you can do is along the lows up to the highs, take profit at the mid range, which would be here. Take profit at the mid range, that will give you 1.6R. And then if it does touch range highs, that will give you a 3.74R trade. Right. Same with shorts. Stops above the wick. And bang. That will give you a 4.4R trade. Right, for nearly 4.5. In the event that I will be covering this in more detail later, but thing about range plays is you put stops above the wick, right? And in the event they do get stopped out, one of two things can happen, right? So you can get stopped out. The range can get retested, flipped, and we go higher. Or there could be a sweep, a liquidity sweep, right? Now, the way these work is above this wick, there's a bunch of orders, right? So a lot of people are like putting all their stops above the wick, you included if you take that trade. And the way price works is it just goes where the liquidity is, right? So what happens is price goes up, takes the liquidity, goes back down, right? So what you can do here, if you do get wicked out, is take what I call an SFB, right? Now, if you all are interested in me making an actual video on what SFBs are, and I'll just go over them in little detail, let me know in the comments. But essentially what you do is wait for the wick up. If the candle closes below, you mark it short, stops above that wick, and just write it down to whatever level you want, right? Sometimes it might give a good bounce, sometimes barely gives you anything. In the event of range trades, you can ride it all the way back down to the range lows or range highs, depending if you're shorting or longing. But that's how you can play this, right? Just play the range until it's broken. Now, that's Bitcoin in terms of it being range bound. But if any of you have been following my Twitter, you can see that I have tweeted recently about what I think Bitcoin is going to do. Now, the first price point I'm worried about, well, not worried about, but I'm looking at is this 65.4k level. That is Friday's high, right? So that's that. Now, what I'm observing here, as you can see, we are close to it. Another SFB, right? What can happen is there could be a sweep, and we can probably ride that down to the mid-range, right? So that could be a quick scalp that we can take. Obviously, I'm not going to be on the daily time frame. That's probably going to happen on the hour. So you're going to wait on the hour, wait for a sweep, close back below, and just ride it down to whatever level. But that's the first level that I'm looking at. Now you could look at this level, but in my opinion it's not as relevant as this. The second level that I'm looking at is 67k, right? So if you're not taking the range trade, which is perfectly valid and you can take, what you can do is you can wait for the conditional trade, which is the sweep that I was talking about, and you can take that, right? So what I think is going to happen is one of two things, right? So first, just to state, Bitcoin currently is bullish, which is broken out of a downtrend. We are currently in an uptrend. So we are looking for higher, long shorts until we get to range highs, of course. That's on the lower time frame. I'm not talking about swings. So if I just go down to the 4-hour real quick, you can see we are making lower highs and lower lows. But on the higher time frame, we're range bound. On the even higher time frame, we're still in the bear. Now, I'll be going over in a minute what I think is going to happen, but I'm just going to talk about this for now. Yeah, so one of two things. I think either we project from like 66.5 to 67k. I think we could sweep from 67k. That is perfectly reasonable. There's a ton of liquidity up there, so I wouldn't be surprised if we do get a sweep. But if that doesn't happen and we do manage to flip the range and break out from it, I think the next level that we should be looking at is this 70.5k level, right? This is a massive SR point, which you can see was quite a major support and resistance line. back when we were ranging over here. So if we don't respect the 66 to 67k level and just break through it and flip it, I think we will get a move up to 70k before we reject and go lower, right? Which leads me on to the point where what do I think, or what stage of the cycle do I think we're in? I think we're still in the bear and that we still have one more leg down, right? Now, this leg down, I believe to be yeah. So this leg down, I think it's gonna end in terms of the bear. I think it's gonna end between 53 and 49k. This level here. So I think we will get a move down here. Will it be a wick? Will we consolidate there? I don't know. But that is essentially coming from the lows that we have here. So 53k to 49. I think we will either get a wick down or we will consolidate in this. I think the wick is probably going to be more likely, since as you can see in the past here, last cycle we did get a wick down, quite a major one. This was what? That's not that. Guess the point across though, we did get a wick down to, I'll go on the weekly, it'll probably show a bit better. Yeah, there you go. Swept these lows and then we ran higher, right? So that's essentially where I'm taking this from, right? So it's just these lows. 52.5 to 53 to 49k, right? So anywhere inside this box, I think that will be the bottom, right? So in my eyes, I think we do have one leg down. Now that does not mean don't buy, right? Of course, I'm not a genie. I can't tell where the bomb's gonna be. No one can tell for certain. It's just a matter of luck, honestly. No one is good enough for it. So the best course of action is either buy in through levels or buy in daily or weekly, whichever you prefer, right? Those are the two options that you've got. At this stage of the cycle, I reckon lower time frame levels. To be fair, I don't think it makes a difference at this stage in the cycle, right? But the most important thing is this little minor 20% drop really is not going to make that much of a difference when we're going to be trading, or if we're going to be trading like all the way at 250k, wherever it is. That little minor 20% drop isn't going to mean a lot. And it's not a risk worth taking. Obviously, I'm not saying don't set capital aside just in case that does happen, because obviously not. But I'm saying prepare for if this does happen, but then you also want to prepare for in case it doesn't happen, in a sense. But yeah, that's essentially what I see on Bitcoin for now, right? So I think we will touch the range highs at least once more, if not 70k, before we go lower. Now, ETH. A point that I'm gonna make with both ETH and SOL is the importance of the Bitcoin pair, right? So, if you can remember from my past market updates, if any of you have watched it, I did chart out the Bitcoin pair of both ETH and Sol. Not sure if I've done any other coins, but these were the main two. Now, what you can see from this, I also post this on Twitter if anyone follows me. All of my links will be in the description of the video if you're interested. What you can see is, by the way, I haven't touched this chart at all other than make it a bit more clearer because like the squiggles and everything, they weren't as clear. I haven't touched this chart once. You can see bottom tapped perfectly, right? Filled this little demand zone and ran higher. Now, the thing that I want to point out here is if we look at this, 6th of June 26, right? Filled that demand zone. What I was expecting to happen, right? I said that this was likely to get filled and run higher. If we look at ETH, 6th of June, lined up perfectly with the bottom, right? So just by watching my videos, you could have timed the bottom, right? You could have found the precise bottom on ETH. Anyway, in terms of the USDT pairing, what do I see? Another range, right? Since we've moved up here, formed a little double bottom, if we take the actual technical targets of this, you can see it puts us back in that 2.15k level, which is quite an important resistance level here. Oops. Which also lines up with this supply zone, right? What am I doing? So that also lines up with this supply zone, right? So that would be interesting. Now, in terms of the nature of ETH's trend, I wouldn't be surprised if here we get a breakout from this range and we push higher, which would also line up with my Bitcoin analysis. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the coming days, weeks, ETH does get another move up to fill the supply zone and goes lower. So I wouldn't be surprised if something like this happens and we do go lower. In the event that this does happen, you want to be putting shorts here. Or if you're in spot, take profit. This wouldn't be a dumb trade to take. This would be actually a pretty good one. So that's what I see on the high time frame. Let's just get rid of the squiggles. On the lower time frame, you can see ETH has broken out of this downtrend that we've had. We have range highs here. Let me just make this a bit bigger. Range highs here, range lows, play the range until broken, as I've said countless times before. That's a range lows. Oops. Range highs. This gives you a 4-hour trade. This gives you a 3.5-hour trade, or 3.4. That's 2 trades that you can take. Now, what else you can wait for is, me personally, I don't like trading when prices just fiddle fucking around at the mid-range. Because for me, when price is doing that, there's a 50% chance of it either going up or down, right? Now, in this case, there's a high chance of it going up because of ETH's trend and market structure. So if you are to play off that, that is something that you could do. But me personally, I don't like doing that. I've noticed that I've lost the most amount of money when I've traded the mid-range. But do as you wish. You can wait for this order block to get filled. Along the stops below the wick. and target the range highs. That's something that you can take. But yeah, in terms of ETH, it's nothing really that exciting. Since we had that push up, it's just been ranging. In my eyes, I think the range is has a higher chance of breaking to the upside than to the downside. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. Now, over to Sol. Same thing. Let's have a look at the Bitcoin pair. Once again, I haven't touched these squiggles at all. You can see tapped it perfectly, mashed the squiggles to a T, and it also tapped that resistance perfectly, right? So, what does this show? It shows that the Bitcoin pairing isn't completely useless and is something that you could very easily implement into your trading style, because it essentially notifies you of when the coin is likely to be strong and when it's likely to be weak, right? So at resistance, it's likely to be weak, and support is likely to be strong, right? You could do the same technical analysis on this, same TA as usual, and you could just use it for your normal trading, right? So, filled, tapped it perfectly, ran up higher. Now if we do the same thing we did for ETH, 6th of June, same exact day as ETH, go on Sol, voila, 6th of June to the highs, ran up 40%, right? So using that alone, that would have given you a 40% move. Now, so in my eyes, is a lot more exciting than ETH currently. Now, as you can see, currently we're reaching resistance. So what I'm expecting to happen on Sol is, following this breakout that we've had, quite a nice breakout, I think we are likely to reject from that resistance, fill this little demand zone that we've got, and run up higher, right? Do I know if that's going to happen? No, but I prefer to play the confluence. I'm not a breakout trader. I prefer to play retest because they're much safer in my eyes. Now, of course, since I'm not a breakout trader, I've missed this 4% move, but in my eyes, that's a risk worth taking in return for the safety. So I'd rather wait for the confluence, right? So I'm waiting for a retest. This is a trade that I'm personally taking. Obviously, do your own research before taking this. See if your analysis lines up with mine. But this is personally a trade that I'm going to take. And yeah, other than that, that's my analysis on Sol, right? But now, I've saved the best till last. Lighter, right? So for those of you that don't know what Lit is, it is a DEX similar to Hyperliquid. And in my eyes, I think this is going to perform very well next cycle, right? Hence the reason I'm showing you this. You can see we've got a cup and handle lined up. Now, if you take the technical targets of this cup and handle up to that resistance, bang, that gives you targets at $4.6, right? So from currently where we are, that would give a perfect 2x, right? Now, there's two ways that you can play this, right? You can either enter now, DCA down here, because in my eyes, Lit still looks good in terms of the weekly. If you look at the weekly, Lit still looks good up until this low gets taken out, right? I do not mind. If we start trading below this, that's when I'll start getting a bit worried and I'll probably look to cut. But other than that, I think Lit is looking pretty good. And next cycle, I would be surprised if it wasn't one of the top performers, right? So from here, I've got extremely high expectations for this coin, right? So yeah, like I said, first thing you can do, enter now. Second thing you can do is if you prefer to play it more safe, you can wait for the breakout and retest and play that up to 4.6, or hold further if you like it. If you would like to, if this is a coin that's in a narrative that you're looking for and you're interested in it, feel free to hold it. This is probably a coin that I'm going to hold in the long term. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this market update. Hope you've learned something. Uh, these next coming months aren't going to be that exciting, really. It's not the environment for swing trading. This is the environment for literally just range trading, at least for me. Scalps, swing trading, not swing trading, scalp trading, and looking at alts, really. So yeah, as always, all of my socials are linked in the description if you want to check me out. Join any of the discords that I'm in, ask questions. Feel free to message me on either Twitter or on Discord. My DMs are always open. And yeah, that's it. Thanks everyone.